All right, so now that we have a general understanding of both photosynthesis and respiration, we can expand our understanding to encompass the entire carbon cycle. That's all the ways by which carbon moves in and around our planet, in the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, or the water, the lithosphere, or the earth, the biosphere, the life, and all the sort of chemical and physical and biological processes that allow that to happen. So that's what we're going to dive into today. You can sort of see the carbon cycle at work behind me. Photosynthesis obviously is slowing down as the sun begins its journey farther south, as the northern hemisphere leaves summer, enters into fall and closes in on winter, and the southern hemisphere enters into spring and summer. Solar energy slows down. We're receiving less and less in the northern hemisphere, so the photoreceptor cells on the trees respond to that. They know that the seasons are changing, so they start transitioning from high-intensity photosynthesis and moving towards dormancy, where the leaves are lost. And what you're seeing behind me with all the color change is that process, is, this transition occurring that is responding to photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is telling the trees to change the way they look and then to start moving into that winter phase. So the first step in understanding the carbon cycle is understanding these spheres of Earth, these locations on the planet where carbon is sort of stored or moves around and can find itself. So let's start with sort of the ultimate reservoir of carbon, which is the atmosphere. Look up, you've got mostly nitrogen, some oxygen, and carbon, very often in the form of CO2, carbon dioxide, or methane, which is CH4. Those are two sort of well-known molecules that contain carbon that are influential and important in regulating temperature here on Earth. So we have the atmosphere, the sky, all the gases that sort of float around above our heads. We also have the biosphere, obviously. That's where all life is. Carbon exists there in animals and in plants primarily. It moves around there quite a lot from animal to plant through photosynthesis and cellular respiration, as we have discussed. We also have the lithosphere, or the geosphere, the Earth sphere. This is rock. Carbon exists in a lot of different forms in the lithosphere. It's locked up in a lot of different types of rock, mostly things like limestone, calcium carbonate. Limestone, by the way, is that layer of rock at the very top of the mountains. Typically contains fossils. This is carbon-rich rock, has a lot of carbon in it. But also, carbon is found in fossil fuels in the Earth, which is very important to us now. Coal, oil, natural gas. We'll talk more in depth about that and how that happens later on. Then we move on to the hydrosphere. Carbon is definitely prevalent in this sphere, but not quite as much as it is in the other spheres, although water is pretty useful at moving carbon around. Water, especially the oceans, can contain quite a bit of carbon. Oceans are one form of a carbon sink, but what happens often with the oceans is if there's too much carbon in the atmosphere, the oceans become somewhat acidic, which is not good. That is negatively impacting coral reefs right now, and we'll discuss that in the future as well. So those are just a basic rundown of those spheres of Earth, the Earth systems that exist: atmosphere, biosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere.